I'm so grateful to be here with you all, and I'm so grateful to the SheMoney team. And I just want to start out by giving a little disclaimer. The name of my session is Trauma of Money, and that probably is bringing up a lot for folks. Maybe raise your hand if the name itself is stirring things up. Yeah. And it's okay if you don't want to raise your hands, because one of the things I want to say is that this session is fully consent-based. So you get to decide on your degree of participation today. I also want to remind you to advocate for your needs. So what can you do to prioritize the safety of your nervous system in this session? That may mean stepping out. That may mean scrolling on your phone, going on TikTok. It's okay, you can do that here. And also, it might mean you want to cry. One of the narratives that we learn, maybe subtly from consumerism, is that if you ever feel bored, tired, lonely, sad, inadequate, something's wrong with you, go consume something to stop that emotion. So in the work that we do, we really encourage showing up as our full selves and having the emotions. And I'll probably cry with you if the tears come, because I'm a Pisces, and that's what I do. So I always love to start when I teach anything by doing some orienting. And orienting is a tool that we use for the nervous system to just remind ourselves we are here in the present moment. So I'm going to invite you to just orient yourself right now in this room by just looking around. If sight is not available, you can orient by sound, just noticing the sounds in the space. Yeah. The nervous system loves when you look behind you to make sure there's no saber-toothed tigers. I feel like you are all saber-toothed tigers right now. Yeah, good. And I also want to orient myself in this work that I do. So I'll tell you a little bit about me, who I am. My name is Chantel Chapman. My pronouns are she, her. And I live and work on the traditional unceded territory of the Musqueam, Kwantlen, and Tsawwassen people, which is known as Delta in British Columbia in Canada. And I love to share this photo. This is my mom and my mom's best friend, and these two women raised me for the beginning of my life. And I love this photo because they look like they were going to the club, but said, let's get a Sears photo shoot first. It's pretty cute. We laugh about it all the time. But I created Trauma of Money for myself. I grew up in poverty. I lived in an environment where the father figure in my life was a heroin addict, and I'm a survivor of multiple types of abuse. And despite having a very successful career in finance, I worked in Fintech, I ran a very well-known financial literacy education business in Canada. I had deep-rooted money issues. I knew how to not be with money, but I could not shift my behaviors. So some of these money issues were things like overspending, but if you looked at my credit card, you would see that every single item I spent to get external validation. So it would be like clothes, makeup, buying friends lunch, and then I also had no boundaries when it came to money. And the lack of boundaries around money meant that I couldn't ask for a raise. I constantly gave people deals on my services, and I was essentially under-earning. Another way that some of the trauma that I had experienced in my childhood manifested was through an overdeveloped sense of responsibility, which means that I was caretaking everybody, and I would do it with my money. I would use my money as a please, love, and accept me fund. And you know what? If anyone is relating to this, you will know how exhausting that is. It is exhausting to be a people pleaser. And what happens is you're so tired, you by default go into financial avoidance. So I'd file my taxes late. I wouldn't do my own budgeting, but I could help you with yours. And I wouldn't even look at bills. It was just complete financial avoidance. I had, in about like 12 years ago, I had a trauma rupture occur in my life, and that's where I started to really look at some of these behaviors that I had around money. And so I sought out therapy. And every time I went to a trauma therapist and I brought up some of these money behaviors, they said, "Have you tried budgeting?" I'm like, "What? Do you know what I do for work?" And then, and then they would say, "Have you tried willpower?" I'm like, "Yeah, I've heard that word, but I'm just not sure how that works." And I realized in that moment that a lot of mental health professionals do not get training around the stressors and the psychology of money. And so I went on a 5-year research journey. I first started studying trauma, I started studying addiction recovery and neuroanatomy, and that was not sufficient to me. It was not really giving me the answers that I was looking for around money. So I started studying community economic development and looking at some of the systems that we live in, what's actually happening in our dominant economic culture. Now, fast forward, we are now the go-to place for professional development for mental health professionals and finance professionals to learn about a trauma-informed approach to money. And this approach was based on this question: what impacts our relationship with money, and the 6 layers that I'm going to introduce to you shortly. We have a faculty of 21 different amazing teachers, and I was doing some impact data recently, and I learned that we have students from 22 different countries, which was amazing to learn. That we're making such a big impact, but also the message came through loud and clear that financial shame and financial pain is a global issue. So let's talk about our trauma of money model. What impacts our relationship with money? If anyone is familiar with financial psychology, you've probably heard of financial trauma. And financial trauma is defined as a trauma that happens because of something to do with money. So this would be like poverty, inability to retire, economic abuse, sudden loss of assets, divorce, etc. In the research that we've done, we've actually found that any trauma that someone experiences, even if it has nothing to do with money, has the ability to impact the relationship with money. Why? Well, if we simply describe trauma, trauma is a wounding that happens that impacts our sense of self, worth, security, and safety. What does money represent? Worth and security. So if we have wounding in that area from an original trauma that has nothing to do with money, of course, our interactions with money will be impacted. So these 6 layers is what we teach from. And that is generational trauma. We've learned through our research that generational trauma can be passed down through nature and nurture. Relational trauma, societal trauma, systemic trauma. This category we call laws of nature. This is essentially a way to say, what frameworks do you model your relationship with money after that are not rooted in scarcity? And we call it laws of nature because if you look at nature, there's so many examples of how to not be in scarcity. Look at mushrooms and forest networks. These are frameworks rooted in abundance and reciprocity. And another thing I discovered is that our nervous system expects reciprocity. So if there is not a fair exchange, and let me put this in the context of maybe the gender wealth gap. If you are being underpaid, your nervous system will feel a threat to its safety. And then the last layer we believe impacts the relationship with money is financial literacy. Financial literacy is so important, but we always say it's last because if the brain is in an activated state of trauma or scarcity, it's very hard to interact with financial literacy. And I'll do a little neuroanatomy demonstration that we do with kids. So if you want to raise your hand, you can do this with me. So let's say this is your brain, and you bring your thumb in. This is your amygdala. So your amygdala is like the fire alarm in your brain. So the amygdala's job is to scan the environment, look for danger, and then tell the brain, you know what, there's a saber-toothed tiger, run. So if we bring our fingers down and we create a fist, this represents our entire brain. So the front part here is our prefrontal cortex. This area has like our reasoning, our logic, our impulse control. This area is what we really need to interact with money. What happens when we get activated is the amygdala fires the alarm, we flip our lid. And so this is why financial literacy is last, because we want to bring this back down. And we can bring this back down by many different approaches. Some of them we're going to practice today. And what happens is this area is your brain stem. So here, the brain's going to communicate to the body, freak out, sweat, get nauseous, feel anxiety in the chest. So we can actually use the body to communicate back to the brain. Let's bring this back online. Yeah. And let's test this. So what do you notice when you read this to yourself? I can be trusted with money. What do you notice? What thought comes up? Anyone want to yell anything out? Oh, yeah, that's good. What do you notice in the body? Tightening, yeah. I'm feeling a lot of nausea, but it could just be because I'm public speaking. Anyone else? Yeah, conflict, yeah. So if anyone was noticing shame, that is something we're going to talk a little bit about today. All the work we do in trauma of money is meant to decrease shame and increase discernment. And just to let you know, just by being here today at this summit, you are doing this. Because as Jackie said earlier, the opposite of shame is community. Now, financial shame is a very familiar feeling for many people. Shame feels like the terror of abandonment. Abandonment, that's a huge wounding. It's a big, big feeling. The opposite of shame is connection and belonging. So let's experience that for a moment. Have you ever felt financial shame? So yell out if you've ever felt financial shame. Yeah, okay, so that's a lot. Yeah, so it's a very common feeling. And something that's very interesting about financial shame is that trauma survivors or identities who have been marginalized feel shame when good things happen, like getting a raise, getting a grant, setting up an investment account, completing a certification, going on a vacation, getting married. Shame can arise when good things happen. So I want to show you some of the core values of financial systemic shame. This is a model from Dr. Devin Price, but he says that in the values of systemic shame, individualism is huge. So when we feel shame, we think it is just us. Consumerism drives shame. Our value is associated with what we can buy and what we can own. Perfectionism, endless and flawless work is all that matters. Anyone feel like they relate to that one? Perfectionism? Yeah. Wealth, power over through financial wealth, and then personal responsibility. Change only happens through personal willpower and strength. And so I just want to show you, this is our destructive shame cycle, and we found that anytime there's a perfectionism value, what happens is shame and that feeling of shunning shows up. Then we go into procrastination, and this is where we might reach out to a behavior to soothe pain, like compulsive spending or hoarding. Then we move into paralysis. And the way we are exposed to financial education normally in our dominant economic culture tells us, well, you need to have a perfectionism value to fix this, and then we're on that cycle again and again. So let's go into the interventions here. Depersonalize the shame. Whose shame is this? If we're all feeling shame, maybe we need to look outward. Whose shame is this? And another intervention or experiment that we use is working with the body. And we're going to do that right now with an embodiment practice. So I've recently met a trauma therapist in the room. We were talking earlier about EMDR therapy, which is a form of bilateral stimulation. And we're going to do a little bit of that. So again, you do not have to participate if you do not want, but I'm going to invite you to stand up and just like find space in the room. And if you want to come on stage with me, I'd love that. Come on. Anyone, come up here. Who wants to feel what it's like to be on here? Come on. Find some room up there. And we're going to walk around, and I'm going to yell out ipsilateral or contralateral. So ipsil means same side. Hi, welcome. Oh, this feels so much better. This is decreasing my shame. We're together. Right? So same side is like same arm, same leg. Okay? You're just going to walk around like that. When I yell contralateral, you're going to go opposite. Okay? Sounds easy, but you just wait and see. All right, let's get the music. Let's start with same side, ipsilateral. Same side. Okay, contralateral, opposite. Opposite side. Opposite. Okay, ipsilateral, same side. Same side. Now, whatever direction you're going in, reverse. Same side. Okay, contralateral, opposite. All right, let's make our way back to our seats. Beautiful. You did so great. Beautiful. Thank you so much for everyone that came up on stage. Thank you. Working our way back to our seats. Beautiful. Wonderful. And I'm going to invite you to just notice your feet on the floor. Yeah. Just noticing your feet on the floor, noticing what you notice. No judgment, no shame, just noticing. Maybe you'd like to take a moment to sigh, inhaling through the nose, sighing it out through the mouth. Beautiful. Just noticing what you notice. Beautiful. All right, friends. So I have a workshop this afternoon. If this was resonating, we're going to go a little bit deeper, especially into some of the behaviors that we call financial fawning, which is basically a trauma response of essentially people-pleasing and how that shows up with money. But thank you so much. It was wonderful to be with you today. Bye. Thank you.